Friends, it's Thursday, December the 28th, 2017. We'll be looking at the last Federalist paper, Federalist 85. I wore this cap yesterday when I recorded a reading of Federalist 84, and this was just to say thanks to the OU community. I've been using the library here quite a bit, and have been benefiting a lot from this community. It's a beautiful place. Many people from not only all around the United States, but from all around the world. As a matter of fact, that's the main reason that for the past 14 years, I've just lived a block or two away from here. So we'll take a look at this Federalist. Let me first say that I've probably shown this book to you. This is volume 22 of a series called The Documentary History of the Ratification of the Constitution. And it covers all the ratification processes, things that were written, things that were talked about in the ratifying conventions of every state, as well as materials that were printed in the papers and some relevant essays. So for those of you who consider one day becoming a scholar and work in this field, this is one of those things that's available, and it's wonderful, and I think you can get it online. It's depending on the state, it has 1 or 2 or 3 volumes that reflect what happened in those states. So take a look at those. I have mentioned many books to you, and in all those books, you can go to the bibliography, and the authors will recommend more books if you're interested. I'm so blessed to have been able to read and record these papers for you. One of the toughest parts has been trying to read it slowly, because sometimes you should try it. It just becomes a little bit more difficult to do it that way. But instead of starting with paragraph 1, let me just read a few lines of this paper. It's actually Hamilton quotes David Hume, the Scottish philosopher that Hamilton and especially Madison was quite familiar with. It's towards the very end of the paper, and here is Hamilton quoting David Hume. To balance a large state or society, says he, whether monarchical or republican, on general laws is a work of so great difficulty that no human genius, however comprehensive, is able by mere dint of reason and reflection to effect it. The judgments of many must unite in the work. Experience must guide their labor. Time must bring it to perfection. And the feeling of inconveniences must correct the mistakes which they inevitably fall into their first trials and experiments. And that is very true. As you read the Federalist Papers and then read and become more familiar with American history, you will immediately know that just a year after these were written, Hamilton and Madison started parting ways, started seeing things differently. 3, 4 years later, they started seeing things really, really differently. And at the Federalist Papers, at the Constitution of the United States, as it came out of the Federal Convention, if it were perfect, we would not have had an American Civil War. Around over 700,000 people at that time, 5% of the population, died in that Civil War. So when you start reading these papers, just keep in mind, this is 1787, 1788. They're trying to establish a government, a union of the very farthest northern part of the continent to the southern part, which totally different societies. One is a slave holding, everything about the culture is imbued with slavery, all the laws, everything that's in there. They have to make sure that the enslaved people won't have an insurrection, on and on and on. And then you have a northern part that's into trading and they see things a little differently. They do have slavery, but it's a small percentage of population. So the laws, the culture varies quite a bit. So as you read these papers, don't think America was anything like it is today. Because I've been here 40 years. This is exactly my 40th year. And I've seen so much change since just 40 years ago. Immense amount of change. When you go back, you'll see the difference. 40 years ago, I could see how Northerners and Southerners would interact differently with each other. So even 40 years ago. So you go back 200 some years ago, it's very important that you, especially as an immigrant or an English language learner somewhere else, not to forget that these societies, these states, especially the regions, were quite different. That's why he spent so much of the first part of the Federalists talking about let's not become 13 countries, or let's not divide into 3 or 4 confederacies, because sooner or later we'll become jealous of each other. We'll become jealous, in a sense, distrustful of each other. And those monarchies that do not want to see a republic established will fan the fires between us, will help us hate one another more and constantly be at war with one another. So just keep that in mind, please. And the reading of the Federalist Papers will make more sense. I highly recommend that you read these a little bit and then listen to a few lectures if you don't have time to read it. Read a lot of American history and then go back and just think about things and the bigger picture as you go forward will fall in place. As I said in the beginning of Federalist 84, beginning of the video of the reading of it, I was very blessed that when I got deported because of the issues that had to do with hostage crisis in Iran, and because visas were not being renewed for a little while, and I transferred schools right in the middle of that and got right in the middle of that whole mess. And I was very blessed that a few years after that, only 4 years after that, of course, my son was born, and that was the greatest blessing. And then not much longer after that, I decided to kind of start reading about America, learn more about America, start reading the primary sources. I came to the OU library. This is way before there was internet or anything like that. And I would go through some of the writings of the founders, and that's how I started kind of getting interested. I was very blessed that one thing led to another, and I do have I've come to believe that this is truly the greatest country in the world. It's not perfect. Anybody who says that, it's a fool. But then with that greatness comes great responsibilities. See, a lot of times we forget the second part. We remember the first part, we thump our chests, but with all that blessing, with all the blessings that have come the way of our way here in the United States, I think comes a lot of responsibility. Lots of responsibilities, actually. So if I were to do something different, I would make sure that the civics education, starting early high school years, would be taken seriously. Instead of spending so much money on bombs, I would fund the education a little better, give teachers more money. I'm ashamed to say that this state is doing an awful job taking care of its teachers. The president of this university was trying to do something about it, but unfortunately, because of misinformation, things changed. So we need to start teaching the Federalist Papers in early high school years. Make it fun. It is, if given to great teachers, they can do it. It's not a big deal. So I'm sorry I went on and on and on, but since this is the last paper, I just decided to visit with you. I'll start reading the paper in a little bit. Just remember, focus on the lectures that I've mentioned, the professors that I've mentioned, and then all the websites that I've mentioned. You just can go and browse and find things that are fun. So I want to thank the creator of the universe for giving me this chance, blessing me with this chance to be able to try to serve this way. And if you're an immigrant or an English language learner anywhere in the world, don't let your government kill your hopes. Because when they kill your hopes, they kill you. Don't ever lose your hope. And if you live in the United States and you're a native American, you're a native-born American, you can change your government gradually and for the better. A good place to start is start reading the Federalist Papers and the founding of the United States.